Story 2, The Ghost of St. Agnus. In the remote monastery of St. Agnus, shrouded in a veil of mystery and ancient secrets, the stone walls seem to whisper of forgotten times and hidden fears. The monastery, perched high on a mountaintop, served as a sanctuary for those seeking refuge in prayer and contemplation. But behind the serene facade of the old stone walls lurked a darkness that made even the bravest monks shudder. The tales of a ghost wandering the halls during the lonely hours of the night. Her mournful wail, a heartbreaking lament that pierced the cold air, were as old as the monastery itself. The legend spoke of a soul trapped between two worlds, her spirit ensnared in the eternal shadows of the past, her sorrow resonating in the silent night hours. For the bravest monks, these stories were more than just old myths. They were a reminder of the fragility of human existence and the endless mysteries of the universe. As night fell and the cold mountain wind whispered through the cloistered corridors, the walls seemed to hum with a mysterious energy, a murmur of lost souls begging for release. Yet the monks remained steadfast in their faith, their prayers a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. But even they could not ignore the ominous presence of the ghost, who glided through the halls like a shadow, her presence palpable even in the stillness of the night. And it was in this atmosphere of fear and mystery that a new journey would begin, a journey that would transcend the boundaries of faith and fear and uncover the truth behind the legend of St. Agnus. On a stormy evening, as dark clouds gathered above the monastery and the rain drummed against the windows like a ghostly ritual, Brother Marcus felt an irresistible urge to venture into the halls. The stories of the ghost that wandered the dark night were whispers in his mind, but his faith in the protection of the holy place overcame his fear. With a candle in his hand and a prayer on his lips, Brother Marcus descended into the depths of the monastery, where shadows gathered like demons waiting for a chance to strike. Every step he took echoed in the hollow corridors, his heart pounding like a wild drum in his chest. The rain beat mercilessly against the old stone walls, its rhythmic patter a threatening warning to those who dared to venture where the ghost roamed. But Brother Marcus was not deterred by the whims of nature or the ghost stories that circulated. His faith in the protection of the holy place gave him strength, his determination a shield against the darkness that surrounded him. As he continued, the corridors seemed to transform into a maze of shadows and mystery, each corner a potential danger lurking in the darkness. But Brother Marcus persevered, his candle a faint light in the gloom, his prayers a call for protection and guidance in these dark times. And so he descended into the depths of the monastery, determined to uncover the truth behind the legend of the ghost, even if it meant confronting the dark forces that dwelled there. For in the world of faith and mystery, there was no place for fear, only for the brave and the determined, who were willing to transcend the boundaries of the known and reveal the mysteries of the unknown. But as he wandered through the deserted halls, an ominous cold enveloped him like an icy blanket, piercing his bones and making his breath catch. Every step he took seemed to echo in the silence of the night, every sound amplified to a deafening crescendo that overwhelmed his senses. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, each shadow appearing to dance in the faint glow, like ghosts wanting to tell their story. And then, amid the deafening silence, he heard it, a soft, wailing sound that seeped through the walls like a mournful melody from a distant past. The sound was so soft, so subtle, that it almost got lost in the darkness of the night. But for Brother Marcus, it was as if the whole world came to a standstill, his heart pounding like a clock announcing the hours of death. He stood there, paralyzed by fear and astonishment as the sound of the wailing melody seemed to wrap around him like a suffocating mist. It was a sound no human being could produce, a sound that seemed to come from another world, a world of lost souls and unspeakable fear. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped, as if the whole world was gripped by the mysterious melody seeping through the walls. And Brother Marcus stood there, alone in the dark, his soul exposed to the darkness surrounding him as the wailing melody pierced his mind like a dagger deep in his heart. He followed the sound, his heart pounding in his chest as he made his way through the dark corridors that stretched before him like endless tunnels of darkness. Every step he took seemed to lead him deeper into the mysterious atmosphere of the monastery, his candlelight a faint glimmer amidst the shadows that surrounded him. He followed the sound, his heart pounding in his chest as he made his way through the dark corridors that stretched before him like endless tunnels of darkness. Every step he took seemed to lead him deeper into the mysterious atmosphere of the monastery, his candlelight a faint glimmer amidst the shadows that surrounded him. With a hesitant hand, trembling with anticipation and fear, Brother Marcus placed his hand on the cold, weathered doorknob. A moment of hesitation overcame him, a moment in which he doubted his own courage and resolve. But then, with a sudden wave of determination, he pushed the door open and stepped into the room, his candlelight a weak, flickering flame in the darkness. The room was filled with a suffocating silence, so thick and heavy it seemed as if the air itself was saturated with it. The walls were covered with dusty tapestries of cobwebs and shadows, and in the middle of the room stood an old, worn chair, its wooden frame creaking under the weight of time. And there, in the corner of the room, lay a figure shrouded in shadows, her body trembling with sorrow as she hid her face in her hands. Brother Marcus approached slowly, his heart pounding like a storm in his chest as he prepared for what he would find. And when he finally stood beside her, he dared to look up and face the truth. But what he saw there defied all logic and faith. In the darkest corner of the room stood a figure shrouded in shadows, her presence like a dark cloud that filled the room with a suffocating aura of fear and mystery. Her face was hidden under a veil of darkness, her eyes glowing like cold embers in the night, their icy gaze piercing Brother Marcus's soul and holding him in their hypnotic grip. A shiver crept down his spine as he stared at the figure, his mind struggling with the impossibility of what he saw. This could not be real, could not exist in the world of rational thought and belief. And yet she stood there, like a being from the deepest depths of hell, her presence as pervasive as a dark cloud that eclipses the sun. Her voice broke the silence like a whisper that pierced his soul, her words like daggers that cut deep into his heart. "Who dares to enter my domain?" she whispered, her voice laden with ancient pain and sorrow. Her words were like an echo from the past, a reminder of the dark secrets this room had kept hidden for centuries. Brother Marcus stood there, paralyzed with fear and bewilderment, as the figure remained before him like a dark angel of death. Her presence filled him with an unspeakable sense of doom and despair, her eyes boring into his soul like knives that sliced open his mind and exposed his deepest fears. And in that moment of unspeakable horror, Brother Marcus knew he was no longer safe in the monastery of St. Agnus. For what he saw, there was not merely a ghost from the past, but a being that should never have existed in the world of the living. And as the darkness closed around him like a suffocating cloak, he knew that his fate would forever be entwined with the secrets of the monastery and the spirits that roamed its halls at night. "Forget me not," she whispered, her voice laden with a deep, unspeakable sorrow that had endured through the ages and never faded. Her words were like an echo from the past, a reminder of a time long forgotten but never entirely erased from the history of the monastery of St. Agnus. "Do not forget the sins of the past," she continued, her voice piercing like a sword through the silence, "for they will always linger in this holy place like a shadow that never disappears, a burden that is never lifted." Her words were a warning, a prophecy of doom and despair that had withstood the centuries and still lived on in the hearts of those who dared to hear it. Brother Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine at her words, an unspeakable sense of fear and dread enveloping him like a suffocating mist. But amidst the darkness and sorrow, he also saw something else in the eyes of the ghost, a plea for forgiveness, a longing for release from the eternal burden she carried. Her presence in the monastery was not just a reminder of the past, but also a testament to the fragility of the human soul and the need for forgiveness and compassion. And as he stood there, confronted by the ghost from the past, Brother Marcus felt a deep compassion well up in his heart for her suffering and pain. Perhaps it was not his place to judge the sins of the past, but to strive for redemption and forgiveness, even in the darkest corners of the soul. With one last look at the ghost, a promise of compassion and forgiveness in his eyes, Brother Marcus turned and left the room, his heart filled with a deep, unspeakable hope for a better future for them both. And as he returned to the life of the monastery, he knew that the spirit of St. Agnus would never be alone in her suffering again, but always accompanied by the hope and love of those who dared to believe in a world where even the deepest darkness could be illuminated by the light of forgiveness and compassion. With a jolt, Brother Marcus awoke from his trance, his heart pounding like a frenzied drum in his chest, like a war drum marking the boundary between reality and madness. A cold bead of sweat slid down his forehead as he hastily turned and fled from the room, away from the ghost he had seen there, her presence like a dark cloud that left him suffocated and paralyzed. His footsteps echoed like a terrifying wail through the silent corridors, his breathing ragged and uneven like that of a wounded prey fleeing from its predator. But even as he ran further and further from the room, her words lingered in his mind like an inescapable memory, a haunting reminder of the dark truth he had discovered. "Forget me not," she whispered, her voice laden with a deep, unspeakable sorrow that pierced his soul. Her words were like nails driven into his mind, her voice a whisper that dominated his thoughts and filled his heart with an unspeakable sense of fear and dread. And as he continued to run further and further away from the room, Brother Marcus felt a deep, unspeakable fear welling up in his heart, a fear that suffocated and paralyzed him, blinding his mind to everything but the darkness surrounding him. But amid his fear and despair, he also felt a spark of hope rising in his chest, a longing for redemption and release from the darkness that enveloped him. And with a final effort, a last glance over his shoulder at the room he had just left, he ran further into the darkness, his heart filled with a deep, unspeakable hope for a better future. And so the monastery of St. Agnus remained a place of both holy devotion and dark secrets, where the line between the visible and the invisible blurred into a shadowy boundary separating the world of the living from that of the dead. The spirit of the past still wandered among the ancient walls, her presence a ghostly reminder of the inevitable shadows that hang over us all, even on the brightest days and the darkest nights. Her mournful lament echoed like a heartbreaking dirge through the silent halls of the monastery, her voice a whisper mingling with the gentle breeze flowing through the high windows. For some, she was just a story, a myth passed down through the ages as a reminder of the fragility of human existence. But for others, she was a reality, a presence that would always haunt them, even in the deepest corners of their thoughts and memories. And as days passed and years went by, the spirit of St. Agnus continued to roam the monastery, her sorrowful lament an eternal reminder of the dark secrets hidden there, buried under centuries of forgetfulness and denial. But even in her loneliness and sorrow, she remained a source of fascination and fear for those who dared to believe in the mysteries of the universe, transcending the boundaries of the known and seeking the truth buried deep beneath the old stone walls of the monastery of St. Agnus. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the night. If you enjoyed the hunt and want to see more adventures, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you want to stay updated on all our midnight mysteries, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Your support helps us uncover more secrets and bring you thrilling new content every week. Until next time, stay curious and keep hunting. This is The Midnight Hunt, signing off.